Hello, everyone, and a blessed Saturday to everyone. The Easter season is starting to wind down, as we know, and today's readings show us that in that we are at the very end of Acts of the Apostles, where St. Paul is under a kind of loose but still real house arrest in Rome, visiting friends and all of that, for 2 years before his ultimate martyrdom. And the gospel is a funny little passage in a way. Talking about whether or not John, the disciple whom Jesus loved, would ever face death. Well, just like the rest of us, including Jesus, he did. But most biblical scholars will say that this final passage is John's way of identifying himself as the author of the gospel. You want to know whose autograph is on this? It's mine, John, the disciple whom Jesus loved. And the text of the gospel as we have it now was probably edited, most biblical scholars will say, by members of his community in Ephesus in Asia Minor after the apostles' death. But that's the final wording and editing. The gospel is the work of the apostle. So there we have that. And today is a special day too, in that as the liturgical season of Easter is coming toward its close, we've celebrated the Ascension. Tomorrow we have the great solemnity of Pentecost. A solemnity, a holy day, maybe not in our cultural sense quite on a scale of Christmas and Easter, but not far behind in importance at best. It's, of course, the event, the great solemnity of the Holy Spirit, and the celebration of the Holy Spirit's presence with us, with the whole of the church, with the whole of the world. Now, to talk about the presence of the Holy Spirit, I have to go back in time a little bit and say to you, many years ago, when I was teaching a class of 10th grade girls, I still teach classes of 10th grade girls, but I was teaching a theology class of 10th grade girls on the eve of a very big dance. And I used that old, jokingly used that old maxim about leave room for the Holy Spirit when you're dancing. And before I had even finished, instantaneously, a hand shut up. And a young woman named Titania, with whom I'm still very good friends 20 plus years later, but she said to me, "Wait a minute, Mr. B, you taught us that the Holy Spirit dwells within me." Uh-oh. There goes my moment of humor. There goes my attempt to joke. And I just said, well, Toddy, you got me. She's right. Of course, she is absolutely right. The Holy Spirit doesn't take up space that we need to leave room. The Holy Spirit permeates everything that is. Oh, the Holy Spirit thoroughly absorbs and is within all of creation and all of us. She got me. Now, on the day of the original Pentecost, the same thing is true. The Holy Spirit doesn't come to the disciples so much as emerge from within them. The Holy Spirit was always there, but now in their hearts and in their minds and in their souls and the very core, every ounce of their being, they're aware of how deeply loved and how intimately close the Spirit of God is with them. And that's when they understand. That's when the words and the meaning and the life of Jesus becomes clear. All of those obscure passages, all of those sayings in the gospel that we still 21 centuries later sometimes scratch our head and say, I'm not sure I understand what Jesus means here. All of those things became clear, and they were sure, and they were certain of their redemption, and they could speak out boldly and speak out to crowds. Interestingly enough, as we'll hear tomorrow, this was a very, if not intercultural like we try to be, certainly a very multicultural crowd. People from many, many ethnicities, many languages, many cultures, all start to hear the word of Jesus Christ when Peter gets up and says it. I mean, there are almost as many different cultures and nationalities present in Jerusalem in Acts and at Pentecost, according to Acts of the Apostles, as we're likely to find at St. Camillus on any given Sunday when we're all back together. That's pretty diverse. But they're all filled with the one Spirit of God. And it's all brought forth in them, just as it is for us, okay, to be Spirit-filled people. And it's been a hard week. And right now, I think it's safe to say we all need to be reminded, or at least we could all use that reminder, that we're animated by the Spirit of God as we struggle with, well, our days of social isolation, just like the disciples were. Well, they were together as a small group, but they were socially distancing and quarantined from the rest of Jerusalem for that time since the ascension. And they come forth from that, and they come out of that. And we're in those days too. We may not be ready to burst forth safely into crowds of people, but we're ready to burst forth with the Spirit of God. But this week too, we've been shocked once again by the realities of racism and hatred and violence in our culture. We've seen the opposite of the loving community that's supposed to be formed by the Holy Spirit. And once more, in the face of that, the Holy Spirit reminds us today and tomorrow in our scriptures that we belong to God always. And even as our lives and our ministries continue and push us to challenge us and challenge us to be better, and sometimes weary us, but we belong to God. Let us sing out joyfully and serve the Lord with gladness, knowing that we are filled with the Spirit. My sisters and my brothers, may the Lord bless you and bless us all and give us a Spirit-filled peace. Goodbye. I'll see you next week.